What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Today we are going to be discussing part 2 of the lessons learned for week 4 of fantasy football. If you want to check out part 1, link will be up here right in the top right corner of your screen. But before we get into it, if you guys could, please go down and give this video a like. Write down a comment. I am answering every single fantasy football related comment, trade, start, sits, anything. I'm more than happy to help you guys. Any questions you guys have, I would love to answer them. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you do not miss another video. With that out of the way, let's hop into our first game, the Bears versus the Giants. I don't know how it happened, but the Giants are 3-1. I'm a Giants fan, so pretty happy about it. But let's get into the lessons learned. First, I am not starting any Giants wide receiver. There's nobody who can start. I mean, especially when the best Giants wide receiver, the cream of the crop Giants wide receivers, Darius Slayton, had 1.6 half-point PPR points. How is that even possible? How do you win a game with your best wide receiver getting 1.6 points? I could also say the same thing on the Bears side. They did lose, but their best wide receiver, Darnell Mooney, had 11.4 points, and it all came on one deep bomb. So my main takeaway from this game is, realistically, the only players you can start on both sides of this field are the running backs. You got Khalil Herbert, you got Saquon, Barkley. When David Montgomery comes back, I'm sure David Montgomery will be a start as well. But these are guys getting 20 touches a game at least. I mean, Saquon Barkley with 31 touches, or 33 total touches. That's just ridiculous. But it's going to be really hard for you to start Fields on a week-to-week basis with how little he actually passes the ball. And Daniel Jones could be nice. I mean, he was utilized in the rushing game pretty heavily, so he will have boom weeks. It's why I do like him as a fantasy quarterback a little bit more than I would other players, but I don't think he's much of a start unless you're in a 2-quarterback league. But anyways, that is it for the Bears versus the Giants. The next game I want to talk about is the Eagles versus the Jaguars. My main takeaway from this game is I feel like we've seen this a lot this year, but weather conditions really do hinder fantasy football performances. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, 5.66 points, fumbles 4 times. I think the main reason for that is because you're playing in the rain. I mean, it's a lot harder to grab a ball when you're playing in the rain. And Jalen Hurts, only 15.9 points. This is a guy who should be putting up 25 a game. He did get unlucky in the red zone with Miles Sanders sapping 2 touchdowns and Gainwell sapping a touchdown, so it is a little bit tough for him. But at the same time, the interception he threw was not his fault. I mean, it just hit off the hands of the receiver. So I would say, if you guys do have players playing in weather conditions like this, unless they're a running back, I really would not want to start them. And even then, I mean, Trevor Etienne, James Robinson both combined for 5 points. Yes, Miles Sanders did have 28, so it kind of evens out there. But the only players I would really want to play in these type of situations are running backs. I think wide receivers and quarterbacks are a lot harder to play, unless you have a really, really good rushing quarterback. Like, if I had Lamar in a situation like this, I mean, obviously you still play Lamar, you still play Josh Allen, these type of guys. But if you have one of those middling quarterbacks and it's like a make-or-break decision, I think weather conditions can absolutely make or break. But anyways, let's move on to our next matchup here, and that is the Jets versus the Steelers. Jets versus Steelers was a pretty interesting game. Steelers, I mean, losing to the Jets, wow. I do have a lot of Jets fans that I'm friends with. I have a Steelers fans that I'm friends with, so it caused a lot of animosity mid-game. It was pretty fun to watch. But my main takeaways are, one, the Jets might not be a great team in regular football, but they are definitely going to produce in fantasy. I mean, when you have good wide receivers here, when you got Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Garrett Wilson, that's always pretty good. When you have Breece Hall and Zach Wilson and a fairly decent O-line, I think this team might be sneaky good for fantasy. There are definitely a ton of players that I would consider starting on a week-to-week basis on this team. I mean, definitely Breece Hall's, at this point, almost a must-start. Garrett Wilson, if you need a wide receiver as a start, so is Elijah Moore. And Zach Wilson, I mean, 18 fantasy points, that is not bad at all. Yes, one of it came on a receiving touchdown, a little bit of a strange trick play. But still, I mean, if you see Zach Wilson getting 14, 15 points a game, that is fine in 2-quarterback leagues. It's not great, but it's fine. And I think this team could be sneaky good. It was also his first start back, so maybe, he gets a little bit more warmed up and he gets better and better. On the Steelers side, Kenny Pickett looked awful. I mean, it was really, really bad. 3 picks. Yes, he did have 2 rushing touchdowns to make up for that, but he did not look good. I give him a break because it was his first NFL start. It's really hard to judge somebody off one start, but it is a little bit concerning for Kenny Pickett in the future. And my other takeaway is I'm really scared for Najee Harris now. I mean, Najee Harris did not get a single target in this game, and it's the first game Kenny Pickett plays. Kenny Pickett's not going to be checking it down to the running backs nearly as much. He's a mobile quarterback, not somebody that's going to be checking it down. I And if you have that, that's where Najee Harris' bread and butter was. He was a volume play who was going to be utilized very heavily in the receiving game. Now, not as much so. I mean, it's scary to say, but Najee Harris has averaged under 4 targets a game this season. And that's not the Najee Harris we know. That's not the Najee Harris we saw last season. This is a different Najee Harris. Yes, he's still being utilized in the rushing game, having, 15 attempts a game, but I don't think that's enough to be an RB1 where you drafted him. He was a guy I was low on coming into the season. I had him below Saquon Barkley, I had him below Joe Mixon. For these reasons, I was a little bit concerned with the quarterback change, but now we're really starting to see it come to fruition. I would be terrified of Najee. He's a guy you could still possibly sell high on, but not a guy I want. Or not sell high on, but a guy you could possibly sell because of name value. But not a guy I'm really, really concerned with. Najee Harris. I would get out if I can. Especially now, next week he's going up against Buffalo. That's going to be a tough matchup for him. But anyways, guys, let's move on to our next matchup here. And that is the Cardinals versus the Carolina Panthers. My main takeaway from this game is the Cardinals looked awful, and yet they still won the game by 10 points. We did see Marquise Brown put up 18 fantasy points, and Kyler Murray looked pretty good as well, putting up 23 fantasy points. I think my main takeaway from the Cardinals side is that you should buy Kyler Murray potentially a little low because you do have DeAndre Hopkins coming back, and once Hopkins is back, this offense is going to be clicking a lot better. You're going to be seeing a lot more deep shots to Marquise Brown because you're not going to be able to double cover Marquise anymore. He's kind of been in that short to medium game role, but now once you have D-Hop back, you can't just limit him to the short and medium game. He's going to be airing it out a ton to Marquise Brown. So I really like this offense in general going forward. And then from the Panthers side, we saw Christian McCaffrey look like the Christian McCaffrey of old, getting 9 targets for 9 receptions, putting up 21 fantasy points despite only rushing for 27 yards. It's a classic Christian McCaffrey stat line. Also reminiscent of Alvin Kamara as well. But that is it for this game. Now let's move on to our next game. And our next game is New England versus Green Bay. And, well, yes, Zappe did not look good from a fantasy football perspective. He looked really good just as an NFL quarterback. I was pleasantly surprised watching him. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch him. So we saw that, but also I would say there's 2 main takeaways. One, again, we are still seeing a 50-50 split from the Patriots side between Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson is being utilized more heavily as the receiving back slightly, but it's 50-50. If one of them goes down, the other one's going to be insanely valuable. But since none of them are down yet, at this point I would say they're both low-end RB2s, high-end flex plays, maybe middle-of-the-pack flex plays. From the Green Bay Packers side, I would say my main takeaway is Romeo Doubs. Getting 8 targets yet again, almost had a 40-yard touchdown, classic Aaron Rodgers throw. It really, in my opinion, that was a catch. I don't know. Leave it down below in the comments if you guys think that was a catch or not. But I truthfully believe that was a catch. He had control of the ball, and he had 2 feet down and then fumbled as he hit the ground. The NFL will NFL, though, so I don't know. A little bit annoying, but glad to see Romeo Doubs getting 11 fantasy points, getting a touchdown, almost having 2 on 47 yards and 8 targets. That's pretty good. I'd say it's certainly possible Romeo Doubs ascends to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, having the same amount of targets as Allen Lazard. And since the start of the season, he has had more total targets than Allen Lazard. Yes, Allen Lazard missed a game, but even without that, he's had more targets over the last 3 games than Allen Lazard. So I really like Romeo Doubs. That's my main takeaway from this game. Now we got the Broncos versus the Raiders, and I will say rest in peace to Javonte Williams. Very, very sad. I was not drafting him a lot just because I thought he was going to be in a timeshare, which it pretty much turned out to be. But very, very sad for all Javonte Williams owners. My prayers go out to you, all of you guys. Really hope you guys can pivot onto some other running backs, or hopefully you guys had Melvin Gordon. But my main takeaways from this game are, 1, Josh Jacobs is going to be getting this workhorse role from now on. 32 fantasy points on 28 carries and 144 yards. That's volume and that's production. Also, 5 of 6. 5 receptions on 6 targets for another 31 yards. And he scored 2 touchdowns. I think the Raiders are going to be playing from behind a fair amount, so I'm a little bit concerned with his overall volume. Going forward, you weren't drafting him like in years past to be that workhorse type of back. He was going in the 7th, 8th round. So I think you got pretty good value on Josh Jacobs, and now you can kind of just ride him as a flex play, ride him as an RB2, and be absolutely fine. So that's my takeaway from the Raiders side. From the Broncos side, I will say Sutton's just been one of the most consistent wide receivers. despite Russell Wilson's struggles throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, he did ball this game, and Courtland Sutton finally starting to look good, as he's the wide receiver 11 in PPR through the first 4 weeks of the season, despite, again, Russell Wilson struggling. Once Russell Wilson gets it going, as he did this game, a little bit more, I think we'll see Courtland Sutton become an absolute animal, a guy I would almost consider a trade low candidate, or a buy low candidate. But anyways, that's it for this. Let's move on to our last 2 games. 2 games were supposed to be pretty good. One was good, and the other was pretty bad. The second to last game I want to talk about is the Chiefs versus the Bucs, and the Chiefs absolutely destroyed. The box score makes it look closer than it actually was. I mean, the Chiefs were up big by halftime. It was never really a game, never really a sweat for them. We saw Pat Mahomes go off. We saw Tom Brady go off. Tom Brady is in the midst of his divorce right now. I'm thinking Tom Brady's going to come back and absolutely feast. Now that he's getting his divorce, I think Tom Brady's going to channel all of his energy into football and on the field. That's just who Tom Brady is. But we did see Chris Godwin get 10 targets here, which is really what we like to see for somebody coming back from a torn ACL, proving that he's at least a decent fantasy commodity yet again. And a guy maybe you could buy low on, because he didn't really have that great of a fantasy performance, but we did see 10 targets, and we're looking for volume. We also did see Mike Evans go off. We know this already. Mike Evans is a beast. Enough said. But from the Chiefs side, we saw yet again, none of the wide receivers really do anything for fantasy. Valdez-Scantling and Smith-Schuster putting up both less than 8 fantasy points. Sky Moore putting up 4 fantasy points. But we did see Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Isaiah Pacheco get utilized a ton. Clyde Edwards-Helaire having 19 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. He had 2 total touchdowns throughout the game, and then Pacheco getting 11 carries for 63 yards. I mean, that's pretty promising for the future, I will say. So I did have Clyde as a sell high type of character, and I still think he is a sell high guy. But I mean, seeing 19 carries, that is pretty promising for the future. Yes, they were up a lot of the game, but still, I mean, 19 carries is a lot of carries for a guy in one of the best offenses in the entire league, behind one of the best O-lines in the entire league. And then lastly, we got the Rams-Niners. My takeaway from the Rams side is that I'm very scared about Allen Robinson. I think he's almost droppable at this point. I mean, if you can get anything for him on the market, I would try and trade him, but I don't think you're getting much. Same thing with Matt Stafford. I mean, Matt Stafford just looks bad this year, whether it be the elbow or what, I don't know. The only player you can realistically start on this lineup is Cooper Kupp, putting up, again, 20 fantasy points, having 19 targets. I mean, he's having a crazy amount of targets this year. It's actually just been ridiculous. But you can't start Darrell Henderson. You can't start Cam Akers. I hate to say, you can't really start Matt Stafford. You can't start Allen Robinson. You can't start Skoranek. There's nobody you can start. And actually, I forgot about Higbee. Higbee you can definitely start. I mean, Higbee's a target machine here, getting 14 targets. He's has the most targets out of any tight end in the entire NFL through 4 weeks. And then from the 49ers side, everything's status quo. Kittle hasn't really looked that good. I think he's a buy low candidate at this point, because, I mean, he's dropped less points than Kyle Pitts so far in his first 2 weeks. But we do see Deebo putting up 20 fantasy points, which is good. But anyways, guys, that is it for my Lessons Learned Part 2. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, go down, leave a like on this video. Again, I'm answering every single fantasy football related comment, trade start sets, anything. I would love to help you guys out. So please go down, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you can dominate your league mates. But with that, as always, guys, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.